Whoop, the dynamic duo!
I have to say, given the stakes, and given what's happening, and given people's desire for Marvel to fail just so they could say, I told you so, just so they could be right, given their proclivity to criticize things not based on actual reality, but based on their perception and their agendas, given that, I'm worried that Kevin Feige is going to screw up the next phase. Dude, I'm not liking the decisions. I'm scared. So, ladies and gentlemen, next topic of conversation. Join us. Kevin, let me ask you a question. What do you think about what's happening with the information that's being released about the Fantastic Four, about the X-Men? Let's talk about the Fantastic Four, for example. And let's talk about Marvel's choice of choosing Pedro Pascal as the next actor. I've talked long enough. What's your thought on Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four?
I love Pedro as an actor. I think that creatively he is quite the talent. Is he who I would picture as Reed Richards? Not by any stretch. But, no pun intended, by the way, but I must say this. I know the direction they're going in. I've seen 2 concept art pieces.
Oh, really? Okay.
From fans,
Okay.
basically. And if you think about it, you're going to get a buff Reed Richards. You are not going to get the classic, lanky, semi-tall character that you and I grew up with. You're going to get more of a contemporary version of the Fantastic Four in general. The 2 concept pieces that I've seen have him drawn in the classic suit or version of the classic suit, and he looks fine as a buff version of Reed Richards. Do I believe him as, or in the role as the world's smartest man? I'm not so sure about that. It has nothing to do with him as an actor, but the way they basically use a combination of traditional art and AI to put him in this setting. He looks good for what the 2 artists have done for the character. The thing is, do you remember how John Krasinski looked in Universe of Madness with the beard and...
Yeah.
Okay, that's who you're going to get. Except Pedro is bigger in body type than John Krasinski. I'm telling you, because other people are saying, is the man going to go on a diet? Is he going to... No. No, he's not. You're going to get a buff Reed Richards. Now, do you want to know the other part of why I say this is not a good idea?
Go.
Very simple. It damages the role or diminishes the role of Bing Grimm, aka the Thing. Because if you think about it from a classic FF point of view. Okay? Each one of the characters had a role to fulfill. Susan is basically the heart of the group. Johnny is the energy of the group. Reed was the brain. And Ben, of course, was the strength. If you have a brain, and I'm not saying brainy people can't have bodies. I'm not saying that at all. But if you have a Reed Richards whose body can equal Ben, you've messed up why Ben is there.
Especially since the actor, and again, things may change, he may bulk up or whatever, but the actor that I've seen that they've chosen for Ben Grimm isn't a big, bulky, buff type of guy. He's, you know, he's a normal, athletic looking guy.
Exactly. And Pedro is big just based on his own body type. I just don't see Mr. Pascal in front of a computer or a blackboard with scientific equations in front of him. He just does not come across as believable.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. Having said that, I've been wrong in the past, and I always say this when we talk about this. I always say I wouldn't have picked Robert Downey Jr. for Tony Stark prior to seeing him as Tony Stark and falling in love with him. I would have never thought Robert Downey Jr., the actor that I had known previously, would be anything like Tony Stark. So while I agree with you 1,000%, I've been wrong in the past, and I may well be surprised in the future. But it would be a surprise because what you're saying makes a lot of sense. What you're saying is that based on what we've seen of Reed Richards, Pedro Pascal is not a prototypical Reed Richards at all. In many, many ways, he's just not. Physically, looks-wise, you know, in many, many ways, he's just not Reed Richards. Can they change it? Possible. Will they change it? Well, given some of the mistakes that are happening, including the release of the Marvel's nonsense, I can't trust Kevin Feige anymore. Given that he chose a director that directed WandaVision, which I don't like that show. There's no redeeming value in that show whatsoever for me. I don't know that he's going to get the Fantastic Four right. And given that he's sacrificing a lot of the major classic Fantastic Four characters, I don't know. I'm not accusing him, and you know, but I'm simply saying I no longer trust that the Fantastic Four can be delivered in the way that it needs to be delivered. The Fantastic Four is a very tricky thing. It's action, it's adventure, it's high adventure, with two very essential components: the family dynamic, that team family dynamic, which, by the way, includes conflict. You know, brothers and sisters fighting. It includes that conflict. It's not a perfect family dynamic. It's a conflicted family dynamic. And the built-in humor, which is very different than the imposed humor. Built-in humor means something happens and that thing is funny. Imposed humor is, let me show you how funny I can be, and I'm gonna make you say a joke that's inappropriate, okay? There's a lot of built-in humor between Johnny and Thing. The Thing as a character is a funny guy. Think funny things happen to him. He has a funny perspective that's mixed with anger. I mean, it's a very complex thing, and you have to be very careful how you deliver that. If you make the thing into a clown, you're gonna miss it. You're gonna miss it. And if you don't go back to the original source material, Kevin, here's the truth. No post-classic Fantastic Four interpretation of the Fantastic Four has worked. Jonathan Hickman, any post-2000, actually 1995, actually 1991, the Fantastic Four haven't worked since 1991. You know, I challenge you to think of a classic Fantastic Four story since after that. So if you don't go to that original source material, you're gonna screw up, man. You're not gonna get it. You're not gonna get it. And I don't know that Kevin Feige gets that.
Allow me to interject this last point, at least for me, with the FF. I did the exact same thing you did a few days ago once you and I had talked. I went back and I looked at the original 1967 cartoon. The one that had originally been done by Hanna-Barbera. And outside of the fact that apparently Marvel Studios is using Dr. Doom, and this is just from the perspective of Jedi Kevin, Batman Kevin, what they need to do script-wise, and I'm telling you, it could work as a movie. Stop with all the mishmash and trying to tie everything together. They need to take 2 episodes of that original cartoon. Only 2. The episode titled The Evil Predictions of Dr. Doom, and the way that they depicted the origin of the team and combined them into one whole story and make that your movie.
Wow, I agree wholeheartedly. Contrary to popular opinion, I do think the origin of the Fantastic Four needs to be retold, because I think that story, as originally told, is powerful and deserves to be. I think you need that to grab the audience. And part of the reasons why the original Fantastic Four movie didn't work was precisely because we didn't grab the audience, because that initial origin was changed just enough to make us not care.
Yeah.
You have to understand the coming together of that team, the risk that they took together, having each other's backs, and then the experience of transforming in that very dramatic way together needed to be explored by a great director who understands and appreciates and is a fan of the material as much as Raimi was with the original Spider-Man. That's what we need. And that origin, I think, is essential to giving us an understanding of who the Fantastic Four is. And then I agree with you. I don't know which story in particular that you're talking about, but I know that those stories from those cartoons are good enough because they were direct translation from the original comic books. Kevin, that's where the material is. That's where it is.
Yes.
Take those stories, obviously flesh them out, obviously explore them and put what needs to, in other words, do what Iron Man did. Do what the first Iron Man did. The closer you stick to the source material, the better the success. If you reinterpret Iron Man's origin as it interpreted the comic book's origin, you're good to go. And then if you follow that with good quality action, with great character development, you have another Iron Man on your hand. And I couldn't agree with you more. I would do those stories and build up to a Galactus. Build up.
I have to say, pardon me for cutting you off.
Always.
Personally, I wouldn't even use Doom right off the bat. But Marvel has said that Doom is their next big bad. I would actually do the origin story of the team, and I would adapt the very first comic book with the Mole Man.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
But because Marvel is so hell-bent on bringing Doom in as their first new villain, that's why I say adapt the 3 predictions of Doctor Doom.
I again agree with you. It's amazing how these mistakes take place. Like, it's amazing how some industries will follow a trend and completely miss another trend. And sometimes the trend they're following is not, no, that's not why the movie was successful. You know, the funny sidekick, every movie had to have a funny sidekick, and so on and so forth. And in the meantime, they're missing the things that actually work. So what you said is exactly true. But if you think about it, Kevin, isn't that why Thanos worked? Like, the Avengers didn't start off with Thanos as the villain. It didn't. But there was a Thanos in the background looming. And I think you're absolutely right. That's how I would handle the Fantastic Four and Doctor Doom. And that's how I would handle the Fantastic Four and the Silver Surfer. I would build up, because guess what? There's a lot of exciting things that you could do before you get to Doctor Doom. As you said, the Mole Man, that could be a fantastic action adventure movie that tugs at your heartstring. The Inhumans, the Submariner. You can do 3 powerful movies with a Doom lurking in the background that culminates to a 3-series movies of the Fantastic Four versus Doctor Doom. Just like you had Infinity War and Infinity Gauntlet versus Thanos. And then while that is going on, I would put in the background, there's a coming threat. And that coming threat is the Silver Surfer and Galactus. And then I would do an 8-movie deal of the Fantastic Four that culminates in the coming of Galactus. By the way, another little pet peeve of mine, enough of shooing in the villains as part of the thing. Like, Magneto has to be in every X-Men movie, or Doctor Doom has to be in every Fantastic Four movie as if he's part of the team. We don't need that. No. That's not what I'm talking about at all. No, we don't need that. Fantastic Four Mole Man, Fantastic Four Inhumans, there's a whole host of villains that you can do with Fantastic Four with a Doctor Doom lurking in the background. Then Fantastic Four versus Doctor Doom. And then Doctor Doom goes away. That thread goes away. Then we build up to the Galactus. Then we have an 8-movie deal. One is better than the next. Each one is anticipating the next move, and then you could reset again. Maybe, and then so on and so forth. Sequels and things like that to the Doctor Doom story. So yes, that's what needs to happen with the Fantastic Four. They need to study the material that made the Fantastic Four, i.e. Jack Kirby, Stan Lee. They need to study that, and they need to deliver that. John Byrne's run on the Fantastic Four was successful because that's what he did. That's what he did. And every subsequent successful Fantastic Four run did the exact same thing. Why?